Hello, we are painting food today. I have been making some big progress with my food art skills. I'm a gigantic foodie, so I am trying to make my food art better. So I'm going to show you how I do that today. Today's subject matter is a made cafe poster of my original characters. I'm going to be showing the process I go through to paint the food. On this poster, I want two of the characters to hold food, and I want some big, cute food art in the background. So let's get into my coloring process. Okay, so you can see my canvas on the right. I have my pancakes just sketched with a black line art layer around the outside and a base color of light brown. The top left is my food reference. I'm going to use a number of pancake references to paint these pancakes, and my style reference, which are some designs that I have done for some magnets that are on my website. Okay, check it out. So that is the art style that I'm going to be following. I have it there to keep it consistent, and my food reference is what I'm going to be looking at as I am painting. Okay, so as I'm beginning here, I am making selections on the base color layer and making the base colors correct. We've got a lighter color on the pancakes for the least cooked sections, coloring the cream, and I'm coloring in the berries. I color in the line art that is on the inner part of the drawing. The outside line art is black and the inner part is the color of the food item. On a new layer, I'm just adding in some shading. I'm really focusing on how the pancakes look. So the pancakes on the lesser cooked part have sort of like a line running in the middle of it. It's not just a smooth beige color. There's some depth to it. The cream as well, I'm going in there and adding some shadows in there because cream is not smooth. It's got lumps, it's got bumps in it. With some seeds for the strawberries as well. I'm focusing on making things look quite stylized. I'm not going super hyper realistic, but I'm focusing on the things that stand out to me with the pancake reference. This shading for the blueberries, I'm actually copying the shading on the blueberries for the cheesecake style reference. So this is how I sort of blend the two, the reference and my style reference. Here I'm adding in the syrup on a new layer. The syrup in my reference is very hard to see, so I'm kind of just eyeballing it and kind of coming up with my own way to do syrup. Here I'm adding a shaded layer for the syrup because it's not just all one color. Where the syrup is thicker, it will be darker, and where the syrup is lighter, I'm actually erasing that part. Here I'm adding the highlights. Highlights are super important to the way that I render food. Adding shininess makes things look more appealing, more appetizing. So adding shininess is a super important part. Here I'm adding highlights to the syrup on the edges. So where the edge of the pancake is, it's where I'm adding my shiny syrup. Okay, so I've actually changed my food reference here to a pancake that has thicker syrup that's a bit more like boom in your face, like you can see it better, just to help me with my syrup rendering. I'm adding some shininess on the strawberries, similarly to my cheesecake style reference. So very thick highlights. Unlike a real strawberry, I just like to make it exaggerated because it's more of a stylized anime-ish style. I'm adding some shadows in there as well, where like the cream meets the syrup, where the pancake meets the next pancake, just to add some depth and some contrast. Contrast and highlights are super important to this exaggerated style. Here I changed my food reference again. The syrup is like a lot more darker and more exaggerated, and I totally regret not doing darker colored syrup, but I still think it looks cool and nice. Adding some shininess as well, where the pancakes sort of meet each other. Adding some shadows to the bottom of the cream, and here I add some water droplets. I just think when you put water droplets on fruit, it just makes things just look juicy and shiny and nice. Oh, and now I'm adding some sparkles. I like to add sparkles on food. I don't know, I just think it makes it look yummy and good. Oh, here I add in another blob of cream. I just thought that it just needed it to balance things out. I just thought a tiny little blob of cream on the top just wasn't enough. Yes, and here we go. Here's my pancakes. They're done. So, important things to note with these pancakes. I cranked up the saturation in the end. Saturation, contrast, highlights, those are the main sort of points with how I do food art. Some key things with the pancakes are that line in the lesser cooked, undercooked area, that really makes it say pancake. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just smooth and round, it's a bit lumpy and bumpy. So let's move on to my strawberry ice cream soda. So here I'm going through the same process. I'm laying down a base layer of color. I've already done a line art layer, got my reference on the left, and my style reference, I'm just going to be using my pancakes basically. So I'm going in and I am coloring in what is sort of the syrupy, saturated part at the bottom. Looking at my reference, you can see the most saturated parts of the soda are the base of the glass, the saturated syrupy bit, and where the ice cream meets the soda, so the shadow of the ice cream. Here I am shading in the ice cream. So ice cream has lumps in it depending on how frozen it is. This ice cream is quite frozen because it will melt into the soda. So we've got a high contrast of shading to light. Here I'm doing the glass, which is kind of tricky. Glass is so confusing to me, but I do my best with my reference to add chunky shapes. Here's another reference I use to do the shape of the rim and to color where the top of the liquid meets the ice cream. Here I'm adding my seeds on my strawberries, some more details there. I just copied the strawberries of my pancakes for the style reference. Here I'm doing the highlights on the glass, and the highlights are the top of the soda part. Here I'm adding some light in the middle of the soda and some extra highlights to show that the glass is shaped. It's not a perfectly cylindrical glass. Here I'm adding some highlights on the strawberries and at the rim of the glass. Here I'm adding the fizzy parts of the soda. So too many of these droplets would make it look strange, and too little would just make it look like the glass is cold. So I tried to make it look like it's fizzy, like my reference. Here I'm just adjusting the saturation of the liquid and doing some refinements on the strawberries. And of course I have to add some sparkles, and there I'm finished with the strawberry soda. So this was my first time drawing a fizzy drink, and so the things that I wanted to focus on were making it look cold, making it look flavorful, and making the ice cream look like ice cream. So some of the main ways I did that was making sure the saturation was high in the syrupy area at the bottom of the glass, getting the water droplets, the carbonated fizzy part water droplets, clustered enough to where it looked like it was fizzy. And with the ice cream, I think the most important part is paying attention to the contrast between the light and the dark. Like I was saying before, ice cream is not just a round circle. It's got ridges and it's got lumps, depending on how frozen the ice cream is. So I made sure to, instead of thinking in my head like just a cream colored sphere, I thought of it more as like a rock or like a craterous planet, you know what I mean, as I was painting it. And that kind of gave the illusion of ice cream, like frozenness. So to end this video, let's paint a dessert. So our last piece of food art is an apple pie slice. I'm just doing the line art first. I actually did the line art after the base color layer. It doesn't really matter what order you do things in. I've got my reference slice of pie in the top left and my art reference in the bottom left, same as when we did the pancakes. So I'm just going through and I am doing my line art. My inner line art is colored and my outer line art is just a solid black. It's just the style of how I've decided to paint this food. And on the base layer, I'm just going through and adding some base colors. The pie is pretty monotone, I guess. Not a lot of color diversity here. So we're just going with different shades of brown and segmenting out the layers and coloring the line art so it makes sense. Here I'm adding in some shading. This was quite a tricky one. The syrup in the apple slices is a very dark brown, so that's what I'm trying to build here. I'm starting with like some general shading colors and then going into the crevices of the slices with some darker brown. I'm adding in some kind of yellowy hues to the slices to make them look caramelized. Here I'm adding some shading to the syrup that's underneath the slice, and here I'm doing the ice cream. This ice cream is more melted, so the gradient between light and dark is a lot more gradual. It's not as contrasted as the frozen ice cream that we had with the strawberry soda. Here I'm trying to make the crust look a bit more baked. See, I've changed my reference in the top left to an example of a pie with a lattice crust. The other one was like a crumbly crust, not really what I wanted to do. So oftentimes I will do like Frankenstein references, you know what I mean? Like multiple references to get the look that I want. So here I'm adding in the highlights. This was a little tricky. And I end up changing the highlights because these highlights were just too small. For my style of food art, big chunky highlights just fit the exaggerated stylization a bit better. So I really kind of struggled here with the highlights before I landed on something that I liked. So, you know, I'm going for bright white specular type highlights on the edge of the crust and on the top of the crust to make it look nice and shiny. Here I'm starting to add in some refinements to the dripping ice cream and some highlights to the ice cream itself, but not too much. Like I said, this ice cream is supposed to look like it's melting, so we don't want sharp highlights, we want more softer. Here I'm adding like vanilla, like little specks of vanilla, like in this reference. I kind of switch between different references for this one because the different slices of pie in my reference photos have different things about them that I like. And here I'm adding some highlights to the sort of caramelly inside of the pie to make it look like it's like shiny and juicy and yum. Here I'm adding some darker contrast in the crevices of the apple slices, and of course I've got to add in some sparkles. And there you have it, a slice of apple pie. So I guess some key things to note with the pie is the melting of the ice cream, making sure our shadows and highlights on the ice cream are more gradual if we want the ice cream to look like it's melting. Also the highlights on the crust to make the crust look shiny and glossy. I make sure I exaggerate those and not make them too small. We want this to look stylized and appetizing, as well as the shininess on the apple slices. We want the apple slices to look syrupy and caramelized like in the reference, but we want to like, you know, crank it up. So that's the idea behind drawing food art. Saturation, contrast, and specular highlights. Crank it up. That's the key to, you know, the way I do food at the moment. So I thought I would show you the final version of the poster. These are my original characters working at a maid cafe, and this is like a promotional poster, little like mock-up thing. So I went ahead and I painted a macaron and a Mont Blanc roll cake for the background decoration. I actually asked on Instagram for some suggestions, so thank you to everybody who suggested a dessert to put in the background. And I just used the same process. I had my style reference and I had some food reference that I just found on Pinterest just to make these two pieces. I probably should have recorded the macaron because the raspberries were very tricky for me. That was quite an interesting learning experience. The same as the Mont Blanc little icing part. That was pretty tricky, but it's quite fun drawing food art. Once you have a good reference, it's kind of a problem-solving exercise with how you adapt something in real life to look a bit more stylized. Like the cream in the macaron, cream doesn't really look like that, but it looks nice and yummy and cream-like when you add those sort of piping, soft serve looking shadows. It's just things like that that make kind of like stylized anime-like food really delicious. Like I can't even paint food without having eaten first, because looking at references for hours and hours just makes me hungry. You know what's a really good comparison? You know how in food commercials they use a lot of practical effects to make the food look more appealing? That's how you need to think when you're doing food art. You need to hone in and accentuate the parts of the food that are appealing and delicious. So syrups, cheese, shininess, glossiness, that's what you need to exaggerate and accentuate when you're painting food. If you're interested in practicing some food art, I've put together a little breakdown of the processes that I've shown in this video, and I've also put together the PSD files of the pancake, the strawberry soda, and the apple pie. This is available on my website and my Gumroad for free to download. Links to this are in the description. As I was editing this video, I realized I reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, everybody who's watched my stuff. I'm not a teacher or anything, so I'm like so flattered that people are interested in the process of my work. So thank you so much. I hope to put out some new process videos soon as I make more stuff. You can check out my website for all of my merch and my Instagram and Twitter for all my latest art posts. Thank you.